Hello and welcome to another edition of ATV. This week we are recapping the first week of the football playoffs, rolling right into the quarterfinals. We've got some amazing matchups this week, but first we're going to look back on what was an exciting first week of the playoffs. And I'm not going to waste any more time. With me as always, Kenny Hodges. Kenny, how you doing?
And I'm doing excellent. It's always great, as I always say, it's always great when we get to sit in front of these microphones and talk about what's going on in and around the city, in and around our student athletes here in the San Fernando Valley. Without further ado, let's jump right into the first round action of what happened last week across the different brackets in the city section playoffs for 11-man football. Starting in Division 1. We had four teams represented in the D1 bracket. Didn't go so well for most of them. We have one who survived. Let's go through the scores. Starting with that 5-12 matchup, Granada Hills was on the road at Marquez, the Expo League champions. It was a tough battle. They got down early on the scoreboard. They fought back, but they ended up going down 17-12 on the road. So the Granada season ends there. Moving down to the 13-4 matchup, the Van Nuys Wolves, 9-1, went on the road to Banning, a team that had a win over an open participant this year. That didn't matter. Van Nuys went on the road, and they took belt to Banning, 36-15. They'll move on to the quarterfinals to face Marquez. Moving down the line, down to the 3-14 matchup, Taft on the road to Eagle Rock. A rematch from the regular season. We wondered if Taft would be able to be better equipped. They did play a little bit better in this matchup. They put up a bunch of points, but they still go down 63-37 to Eagle Rock. Eagle Rock will move on to the quarterfinals. Last but not least, of our Valley teams, Elko hosted Dorsey. Dorsey came in, put up points early. Elko was never able to kind of get back into the game, and they go down 26-8 at home, and that's where the season will end for the Elko Royals as Dorsey moves on. Just to quickly recap the other games in D1, the number one seed Venice, they shut out Bell 38-0. Franklin beats Westchester 35-15 to set up a Venice-Franklin quarterfinal matchup. As we said, Van Nuys will take on Marquez. Eagle Rock will take on Dorsey, and Gardena handled business at home. They beat Hamilton 30-26. Southgate handled Lincoln 47-21 to set up a Gardenia Southgate matchup in the quarterfinals. So moving on to Division 2. The number one seed Cleveland, they hosted Legacy at home. They take down Legacy 24-3, a great defensive performance by the Cleveland Cavaliers. They'll move on to the quarterfinals to host the North Hollywood Huskies. Went on the road, as we thought they might have, against the Sylmar Spartans. Got out to a big lead, 42-14. They were up in that late in that third quarter. Sylmar had a bit of a rally to get the score close, but it really wasn't as close as the scoreboard indicated. North Hollywood beat Sylmar on the road 42-35 to set up a matchup with Cleveland in the quarterfinals. Moving down to Panorama on the road at Fairfax. Fairfax offense was a little too much for Panorama. They go down 55-22. The season ends there for Panorama. The Chatsworth Chancellors, they went on the road to Roosevelt. They come away with a 40-12 tidy victory over Roosevelt, a bit of an upset. But they move on to the quarterfinals. Going down to the bottom of the bracket, Arleta went on the road to Huntington Park, and they came away with a 35-32 victory. They'll move on to the quarterfinals, where they will face the San Fernando Tigers, who took down Southeast 33-14, and a good defensive performance by San Fernando, setting up an Arleta San Fernando quarterfinal matchup. So to recap the other scores, University took down GWP 16-12 to move to the quarterfinals. They'll face Fairfax, and Marshall handled Bernstein on Saturday 36-20. So Chatsworth will be on the road at Marshall next week. Moving on to Division 3, we had a few teams here. We only had one that was able to survive and move on. Poly went on the road to Contreras. They go down 28-20. They go down 35-28, on the road at Contreras. Contreras will move on to face Jefferson, who beat Canoga Park 57-7 at home. A good season for Canoga Park. It ends there. in the first round of the Division III playoffs. Moving down to the number 10 seed Verdugo Hills. They were on the road at Roybal. Roybal put up 34 points in a good offensive performance. They take down Verdugo Hills 34-14. And last but not least of our Valley teams, the Chavez Eagles go on the road to Manual Arts 36-14. They run wild on Manual Arts on the road. They are the lone survivor from the Valley that moves on to the second round. Well, they will take on Wilson, who beat Rancho Dominguez 42-14. Other scores in the D3 bracket: Santee, the number 1 seed, they beat Locke. They move on to the quarterfinals. They'll face Maces, who beat Fremont 34-16. That'll be a quarterfinal matchup there. Like we said, Contreras beat Poly, and Jefferson beat Canoga Park. So we have a Contreras-Jefferson matchup in the quarterfinals there. Wilson and Chavez, and then on the bottom of that bracket, Roybal, who beat Verdugo Hills, they'll play Hawkins in the second round, who beat Los Angeles 34-0 to set up those quarterfinal matchups. Last but not least, in the 8-man division, we had pretty much went the way we thought it would go with the 8-man division. The number 1 seed Sherman Oaks, 66-0 shutout victory over USC Hybrid. East Valley took down Valley Oaks 28-22 in a close one. The bottom half of the bracket, Teach Tech Charter took down New Design Watts 58-20, and Animal Robinson did what we thought they'd do. They won 66-16. So in the 8-person semis, we have another All-Valley matchup on the top side of the bracket, with Sochas taking on East Valley in the semis, and then Teach Tech takes on Animal Robinson. Looks like we are one step closer to that Sochas-Robinson rematch in the championship that we all are looking for. So that is all the action on the scoreboard that went down. But let's talk about our takeaways. There was a lot of things. There was a lot that came out of that weekend. What are some of the things that you noticed and you took away from that first round of action?
Definitely a little bummed in the way some of these games turned out, but there was some competition. Some things just go, football is football. You roll out that, you kick that ball off, and anything can happen. Was hoping for a little better results in D3. Take what we can get. Your Chavez Eagles, by the way, looking pretty good. If they can keep that run against a tough Wilson squad, your geniosity is shining through. But I'll tell you that D1 bracket is awesome. It really kind of talks about the parity that kind of exists there. Some, in D1, you've got schools that believe they're going to be open and they kind of stomp. But you look in the middle of that bracket, there is so much parity. And it's exciting to see how that one rolls out. I'm a full believer in what Van Nuys can do after what they did to Banning. Not that I wasn't a believer before, but this is kind of reinforcing what we've said that this program can do when they're rolling on all cylinders. And I'll wrap it up with the one we semi-dubbed kind of the Valley Division, because there were so many representatives here in D2. It's shaping up to be a heck of a battle. It's kind of going the way we were predicting. Like Cleveland Noho in the second round looks exciting. Arleta San Fernando. Chatsworth is showing us that the reports of their demise were greatly exaggerated because they turned it on when the playoffs came. So I'm going to say, as much as I was a little bummed with some of the outcomes, there's a lot to be excited for. And there's plenty to play for. This is still rolling pretty good here in the quarterfinals.
I know there's miscommunication sometimes, or misinterpretation of things. There's never on our end been anything but hope for this season for Van Nuys. We saw what was coming. We've seen the work that has gone into that program the last couple of years. But like we've talked about before, there's certain thresholds you want to see a team pass, right? to not just show you like, hey, look at all the wins, look at who we've beaten, but there are certain landmarks that you hit that sort of signify like, no, this team has reached and ascended to another level. All the good teams, especially on our end, all went through that. Birmingham back in the day when they sort of had a low period and then started building back up when Rose took over, they hit thresholds, they hit benchmarks, and then you sort of take off and get rolling. Kennedy, there was a couple of years back. What was the conversation we were having? Boy, they run into Granada and they looked okay, but they couldn't quite beat them. They ran into Panorama and they couldn't quite match up with the physicality, right? And then all of a sudden they hit a certain point where you saw they built that program to a point where it was like, nope, we are absolutely on par with whoever you think are the best teams around here. And this is something this is a statement that Van Nuys made this past week. To go on the road against a team that had a win this year against an open participant, and you go in there and handle them like that. Now the narrative has completely flipped. Now the narrative is, man, some of these other teams got screwed that you are a 13 seed and they have to see you now, as opposed to maybe later on in the semi. Because if you go on the road and you perform like that at Bannon, now I'm expecting you to go on the road at Marquez and wreck shop there too. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's congratulations to them and that staff and those players and Carlos Herrera leading that group and how they've been playing. Like I said, this is a team that has 10 wins now. The only loss is to Kennedy, who's playing Birmingham in the Open. You got to give this team their props and their recognition where it is due. And this is a team that now all of a sudden looks like a threat to not just continue, but maybe really realistically be able to lift some hardware. But we'll double back to that question a little bit later. And a couple of other standouts that I had from the first week. Yes, Chatsworth. With one win in Division 2. Everybody shut up. This is why they were there. You kind of deal. You go lay belt like that. You show that physicality that we know that program has. Yeah, that's a big win. And now they have more than a puncher's chance going on the road to Marshall this coming Friday as well. And yeah, these things kind of played out the way we thought they were going to in Division 2 with Cleveland. We talked about North Hollywood. We thought that North Hollywood would go in there wanting to make a statement, and that they did. Because like I said, this game, the final score is not indicative of what this game was. This was a game that at one point was 28-0, 42-14. You go look at their social media, they're talking crazy the whole time. This is what they expected to do. They feel like they were undefeated, and the best way to show you were undefeated and go on the other team's house and go in there and go ahead and put Belter behind. And Arleta and San Fernando both had real tidy efforts in that first round. They kind of cruised the victory. There wasn't really much doubt about the games they played, so we were kind of expecting that to be there. And we've got some exciting All Valley matchups we'll get more into. And last but not least, I told y'all about Chavez. If they got out of this first round, what it might look like. And I'll mention this young man, Nicholas Diaz, their bell cow running back. When I tell you, this is one of the scariest looking running backs in all of the city section. And the way he ran that football this past week, it reminds me of another running back at Panorama who put his team on his back all the way to a D3 title just last year. I'm getting deja vu watching this young man run. When you got a player like that in a division, when we're talking about how there's not a lot separating these teams, especially the 8 teams that are left, but you can identify one team has a dog, a bell cow, that might be enough for them to really make a deep run. So we'll leave that there. Those were the big takeaways from the first round. But let's double back to what I was just kind of talking about with Van Nuys and with Chavez, right? Van Nuys kind of made a statement. It was an eye-opening statement to the rest of that D1 bracket. Look at what we did on the road at Bannon. We're the real deal. We're for real. We're here to take it all. And the same thing when you look at Chavez and that young man, Nicholas Diaz, and that group. And we talk all the time about Chavez absolutely has an identity. Sometimes you got to have the players to execute said identity. But when they can get in a situation where the teams around them are pretty much even, they're usually leaving because that's just what we've known this program to do. But if I had to ask you right now, this is the question of the week. who do you think has a better shot at a title? Is it that Van Nuys program that just went and made a huge statement in D1? Or are you looking at Chavez, even though some of these teams are kind of even, but Chavez really, of all the teams from that round, outside of like Jefferson, who had a big effort against a team that we thought Canoga Park would play them a little closer. Who has the better chance at winning a championship when you see what's left in front of them, Chavez or Van Nuys? Who are you picking?
See, that was the key word. When you see what's left in front of them, based on exactly what we're looking at right now, I got to go Chavez. Number one, because we've talked about how D3 is generally more of a bracket that has a lot more parity, from top to bottom. The parity in D1 sits much more in the middle. Because when you're looking at, the number 1 seed, the number 2 seed, the number 3 seed, those 3 teams for sure are teams that believe 100% they got robbed and should have been an open. Most of the time. They will point to this little stat or that little stat and argue that. As confident as I am that Van Nuys will put up a really good showing against Marquez and has a great chance to move on to the semis. In the semis, if they meet Venice, I don't know. Like, Venice was a team that was right there. It's not taking anything away again because Banning defeated an open team. And Van Nuys went in there and made a statement and said, we are here to go. But if I'm looking at it just pen to paper, that's the takeaway. They have the harder road. It's not to say the confidence isn't there, but they got the harder road. And
here's what I'll say. Absolutely, the parity in D3. You see how when we get a physical team from the Valley into these brackets, whether it be Chatsworth a couple of years ago, we saw what Panorama and Van Nuys did in D3 last year, right? And now you see Chavez. Chavez has a tendency to get into D3 and make a mess of things, and beat up people. That parity, yeah, it's there's not a lot separating these teams. But I want to lean Van Nuys only from this standpoint. If Venice if they were to beat Marquez, which I fully believe they will, win this game this week. If Venice beats Franklin, it's funny, the way Venice plays is sort of, having watched them this year, it almost feels like that's a matchup Van Nuys could sneakily play with Venice, because there's 2 teams that want to play more of a wide open game. That's Venice wants to chuck the ball around the yard. You never know what could happen. They can throw up some picks, and there's a lot of wackiness that could happen if Van Nuys were to play Venice. So it absolutely is the tougher road, because then even if you were to survive that, now you're talking about maybe having to play an Eagle Rock or a Southgate or somebody, right? So it's a tougher road. But I love what I've seen from them. I have a lot of confidence in Van Nuys. So it's almost a 50-50 split to me. I think things have sort of broken down in a way in which I could see them getting there. But I absolutely, if I had to pick, I think I'm going to go with you. I'm going to go Chavez, just because, man, when you got a running back who can go and put up 262 on the ground with 24 carries, that's a guy that's basically like, hey, it's my time, my senior year. I'm going to carry this thing as far as I can carry it and leave my mark and my legacy on this program. So I'll lean Chavez as well. So that wraps up kind of conversation about that opening weekend. A lot of great action, a lot of great results that lead us to some great quarterfinal round matchups, including the Open that gets underway this week. And just to recap the games on our end that we care about, obviously Van Nuys on the road at Marquez. We've got that Cleveland NoHo All Valley matchup. That will be a fun one. Arleta San Fernando, another all Valley matchup on the other side of the D2 bracket. Chatsworth on the road at Marshall. Over in D3, we got Chavez will go on the road to take on the number 3 seed Wilson. That should be a physical. That should be a fist fight of a game. And in the open division, we have that Kennedy Birmingham matchup to kick things off in the open bracket. Let's dive into that Kennedy Birmingham matchup. Let's get a little bit in depth because, like I said, this is a matchup. As soon as we saw the brackets come out, we went, whoo, that's an interesting one because obviously Birmingham is the 2 seed in the open division for open bracket for a reason. They're perennially the best team in the city for going on a decade now. But this is a Kennedy program that we have been watching for a few years now. Continue to build and build. They've won the city championship. They've now cemented themselves as the top team in the Valley Mission. There's so much talent. There's senior leadership. There are junior contributors on that program as well. And this feels like a year where it all has culminated with that around that senior quarterback, that this is a chance for them to really, really do something that could leave a mark on the city football and that Kennedy program going forward. But this is a tough matchup in Birmingham that they're going to have to deal with. So the best way to kind of talk about a game like this is obviously there are 3 phases of a game, right? So let's start with the offenses here. We know with Kevin Hawkins and that quarterback at Birmingham, he's a load. He's hard to bring down. We've had some questions about the passing attack and his ability to hit receivers down the field. But the thing that we know that he can do is he's a physical presence. He's a great runner. They have a bevy of great running backs who also carry the ball for them. But we also know on the other side, Kennedy has Diego Montes. They have a bunch of receivers. They've got 2 running backs. They've got a bunch of weapons that they can throw at you. And quite frankly, they have the most weapons that Birmingham will have seen from a team since they played a lot of those Southern Section teams in the beginning of the year. So if I were to ask you who has the advantage on offense, who would you lean towards? Birmingham or you lean towards Kennedy?
I'm going to have to lean Kennedy. And there's only because there's enough on that Birmingham side that we look at as still kind of unproven. Even, regardless of what they've been through and all the battles, there's still enough question marks when we look at this. There's levels of pressure and challenge that offense hasn't seen in 8 weeks. So yeah, I'm going to go Kennedy there. The weapons are there, like you were just laying it out. For me, it's not a massive advantage, but it's a clear advantage.
Yeah, for sure. I couldn't have said it better. Not a massive advantage, but I do think it's an advantage just because one of the things that we've learned about Kennedy is they're built for track meets, because that hurry up offense, they have a hurry up offense where whether it's run focused or pass focused, they get up, they get set, they get snapped, they get it going, which can be difficult for teams to sort of manage. If you're a team that has any issues on your back end with coming up and making tackles, they'll hit you on screens. If you got guys who over pursue, now they've got a quarterback who can get outside the pocket, and now he is accurate and can hit guys down the field. Like, they just present so many issues in ways that maybe Birmingham's a little bit more limited. And that's not to say that Birmingham doesn't have weapons. Paul Turner is absolutely scary when he gets the ball in his hands at receiver. Braylon Morgan, a bell cow that's worthy of being talked about. You're talking about guys like Jimmy Renteria. Kevin Hawkins is a weapon himself. So this is a team that themselves has a lot of weapons. But when you look at the questions for Birmingham this year have been more on the offensive side, and Kennedy, that's the last thing you worry about. So I'll give them the advantage there. Now let's talk a little bit about defense. So now Birmingham, if there's anything that's sort of been their calling card, it's been their defense and their physicality the last 5, 6, 7 years. They just literally physically beat teams up. Kennedy is not necessarily known to be a physical defensive team, but they are a team that rallies around the football. When you watch Kennedy, there's never you never see guys not rallying into the ball. Like, they play sound, they communicate on defense, which is part of the reason why they're here. So defensively, who are you giving the lean towards, Kennedy or Birmingham?
On defense, for me, it's going to be Birmingham. Kennedy has their, ability to punish you on that end, but I still think they're going up against, if you're just going defense versus defense, there's some monsters on that Birmingham defense, and they've got the aggression in their defensive backs. They look to make plays every time out. Not to say Kennedy doesn't. And so again, for this one, there's an advantage. I don't think it's another massive. I think these teams are more evenly matched on paper than you first want to look. But yeah, advantage Birmingham, not a big one.
Yeah, it's definitely advantage Birmingham because, like I said, when you talk about this game, I'm not necessarily worried about what we're going to get from them defensively. Kennedy's going to have to figure out how to keep that penetration from that front seven ending up in their backfield, because obviously with Diego Montez, if he's upright, if he's got time, he can pick anybody apart. But one of the few teams that we know in the city that will never give you just time to sit in the pocket is Birmingham. So I lean there. There's some special players, Kevin Gatewood and James Montez on that Kennedy defense up front that can kind of wreck the game. But I just think Birmingham is probably the more physical unit, so I'll lean there. But the third phase of the game is where this game could be won or lost, and that is on special teams. We've seen some of the plays that guys on Kennedy's got some guys who can break games on special teams, but we know Paul Turner and Braylon Morgan are absolute game breakers for Birmingham. Who do you think has the edge there?
I wanted to say even, but got to go one way or the other. I'm going to lean Kennedy. I'm just going to flip it one way. I'm going to go Kennedy. They've got just enough. Special teams does include their kicking team, and I really like their punt and their kick teams, not just the returns. So that kind of is what tilts it for me.
When you're talking about Francisco Ceja, I think he's the better kicker, Kennedy's kicker. I've seen that unit just be sound all year long. I think the difference maker to me, though, is probably Paul Turner, and while leaning towards Birmingham, because that kid is just, you absolutely can't kick the football to that kid. Like, it's like, I've watched Birmingham games this year where I'm like, oh, okay. The Elko game being a great example where Elko gets a touchdown, they're feeling good, and they're like, we're in this game. And then the next kickoff, Paul Turner takes it 85 yards and no one touches him when he gets to the sideline. And it's like, okay, no, we felt good. Now we're right back to square one. I think that kid is a huge difference maker in many ways for Birmingham. He might be there, but obviously a lot of the conversation focuses around Kevin Hawkins, but I think Paul Turner might be their actual most important player because of all the different hands and pots that he has on both sides of the ball. So I'll give a slight lean to Birmingham on special teams. But if I had to pick one or the other, like a kick to win the game, similar to what we saw Chatsworth do last year to win the championship, I think I'm leaning towards the Ceja kid for Kennedy. So really, it's a coin flip. But for the sake of argument, I'll go Birmingham the other way. Okay, so nitty gritty, let's talk about these all Valley matchups, because honestly, that's what we hear. We want our teams to all. We wish we could sweep all four of the brackets and win all those championships. It's not a realistic possibility most years because of how many teams and so much talent across the Valley. But in D2, we have two teams, we have two games in which we look at whoever wins those games has a real shot to not just win the semis, but find themselves in the championship, which makes these games so important this week, which makes them all the more exciting. And let's start with this Cleveland NoHo matchup in the D2 quarterfinals. Let's get a prediction here. Cleveland coming off of a 24-3 win in their first round. They're looking good. Their younger pieces are starting to step up. And then you have North Hollywood, the defending East Valley champs, go on the road to Selmar, a good Valley Mission team. They put up an impressive performance, and now these two teams match off at Cleveland. Give me a winner. Who you got winning this game and moving on to the semis?
I'm going to have to stick with my prediction from our bracket breakdown. I had Cleveland going over. I had them taking the D2 title, so I'm going to have to stick there. We did say, you and I, that the winner of this one is most likely, I believe we picked the winner of this winning the bracket, taking D2. So I'm going to stick with my original prediction. Nothing against that NoHo team. That's a powerful team. But Cleveland.
For me, this game comes down to two factors. It's Cleveland's defense versus NoHo's offense. Cleveland, part of the reason why they struggled a bit this year is because they were playing a lot of younger guys. They were playing a lot of guys. But like I said, we get to this time of year, experience year-wise in school, you might be a sophomore, but really your experience by the time you get to postseason, if you play the whole year, you're basically a junior now. You are a veteran. And the same thing with Cleveland. That performance they had last week where they held Legacy to 95 total yards for the whole game. You had Dominic Fuentes, Robert Granillo, Kobe Green, three juniors leading the way, flying around to the ball. And they're going to need to do that this week because the thing that we know with NoHo, and they have some dynamic playmakers on that offense. Josiah Taylor had big plays in that game for his 2 touchdowns last week against Selmar. Gavin Zamora has really sorted up the NoHo's bell cow. He had a $187 and 4 touchdowns. You're going to have to tackle to beat this NoHo team. So Cleveland is going to have to rely on those juniors to play like seniors and not allow NoHo to come in and start running the ball all over the place because that's exactly what they want to do. And you know how North Hollywood gets down. They don't wait around. They want to put up 14-21 on you in that first quarter, first half to really take the crowd out of it so they can really start wearing on you. And because of that, I just think that NoHo is so red hot. And if there was ever a team that could go on the road to Cleveland, that's not a Birmingham or someone like that, it would be a team that's sort of built the way that North Hollywood is. So I'm actually going to go North Hollywood. Yes, I'm going to stick to my original prediction as well, and I'm going to have North Hollywood come out on top on this one. I think it's going to be a close game. I think Cleveland is nothing to sneeze at. If North Hollywood goes in there thinking it's an automatic dub, they're going to find themselves in for a war. But I'm going to go NoHo. So let's move to the bottom side of that D2 bracket where we have another interesting matchup with Arleta on the road at San Fernando. 2 really good teams, 2 teams that see the way the bracket is lined up and probably feel like they've got a good shot to get to a championship game if they can get out of this week. Arleta, San Fernando, who are you picking?
This one is so much more difficult for me to pick. Mm-hmm. These teams are so evenly matched. It's not even funny. San Fernando played a lot of East Valley in their non-league, and so they've got the common opponents. Both teams handled Chavez and Pauley with essential ease, right? San Fernando took Chavez 42-6. Arleta was 41-0. San Fernando won against Pauley 48-8, and Arleta was 50-7. So these are similar scores, similar type results. The difference is San Fernando is a little more well balanced in the way they attack. They have a dynamic game breaker in Andrew Newchurch. Arleta has been just smash mouth, punch you in the face, and we're going to take it this year. They, correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't actually seen them have that one, we're going to lean on this kid, he's going to be the guy, he's going to carry us through. And it's been, a lot of yeoman's work in Arleta to get to where they're at. And so this one, tough one, ultimately the defense that stands strongest is going to win. And now I'm going to waffle. I was gonna go 1-1. I was gonna say Arlita's defense. I'm gonna go with the game breaker. I'm gonna say New Church and that San Fernando offense can get it done. Gonna be a tight one. I think San Fernando takes it.
In my bracket, I had San Fernando running all the way to the championship game, so I'm not gonna jump off of that bandwagon. I will say this though. This game is going to absolutely, especially on the Arlita side, can you maintain the balance that they sort of found towards the end of the year? Jesse Rios really sort of stepped his play up towards the end of the year for Arlita, and it's really giving them on the offensive side of the ball balance. We know Arlita's tough nose on defense. That's always been their calling card. The years when we've seen them go far, when we've seen them challenge for championships, is when the offense can match with the physicality of the physical identity of the defense, right? And we saw last week in this game, Jesse Rios threw for 200. Jose Rosas ran for 200. They had a $188 from Eli Livingston in the pass game. So you saw that they were able to, it was a balanced attack. It was running pass, and you're going to need that for San Fernando because, like I said, if you can sit on one thing or the other, they can defend you. And then you have to worry about what San Fernando does offensively. The one thing I'll say for San Fernando, even though circumstances of the game dictated that you play the best way that's going to get you the victory, and that's what they did. They didn't have to overexert themselves too much against Southeast, but we are going to need more from Darian Turner, who only had, I think, one catch in that game. Andrew Newchurch was, for his standards, was relatively quiet. You're going to need those guys to step up because this Arlita team that's coming in here, they don't give anybody anything. You have to beat that team. Like I said, this was a team that took a 10-point lead into the fourth quarter on North Hollywood. We could be talking about this team was the East Valley champions with 1 quarter away from being East Valley champs. So this team is nobody to sneeze at. So you're going to have you put your best foot forward. And we're going to need that 3-headed monster of Julian Sarzo, Melvin Pineda, Andrew Newchurch, and then contributions by Darian Turner to kind of bolster things. But I'm going to stay with San Fernando, but they're going to have to play better than they did last week if they're going to move on and get to the semifinals. All right, last but not least, the big one, Kennedy versus Birmingham. At Birmingham, Kennedy making their first foray into the open division. Absolutely deserve to be there, but this is a tough ask on the road at Birmingham. Give me your prediction for how this game goes.
I'm going underdog. I'm going upset. I'm saying Kennedy goes in, pulls it, and ends that non-finals winning streak of Birmingham.
My head leads me one direction. My heart leads me the other direction. So I think I'll stay with what my head tells me. My head tells me that this is the first time. I don't think it's the last time. I think Kennedy getting here, I think, is the statement of that's where this program is going to be and stay. And in this area, I think they firmly sort of entrenched themselves that they are now in that mix with Eagle Rock and Banning and some of these teams that you would consider that group that's always going to sit somewhere between 5 and 10 or 12 in the city. That's always when you go into the year. As long as Cassidy wants to be here, hey. Are they going to be in the open or are they going to be in the top of D1? I think that's just where Kennedy is now. And you look at that program, you look at some of the talent that's there that'll still be here next year. I think this is them sort of making their statement that, hey, we're one of the big boys now. Does that mean you go into Birmingham and win this game? No, it doesn't, because that's a program that they're, hey, welcome to the party. We have a residency set up in the corner. This is where we are. This is where there's nothing that Birmingham's going to see from Kennedy that they won't be prepared for. But I do to give Kennedy more than a puncher's chance in this game. If this was neutral site, I think I want to lean more towards Kennedy. But I think I'm going to stay Birmingham. I think it's going to be close. I think we are looking at a situation where last team with the ball could win this game. But I do think that the game probably comes down to a turnover here, maybe a punt or kick return there, some sort of game breaking play that'll maybe kind of save Birmingham's bacon a little bit against a tough opponent. So I'll stay Birmingham, but I am a waffler. If you ask me this question 30 minutes from now, I might go for Kennedy, but for the sake of we're recording now, my pendulum has swung back to Birmingham. So that's going to end the conversation here for this week. Man, we're excited. There's so much great action. We still got a bunch of teams. We lost a bunch of teams. A bunch of them dropped like flies in the first round, but we still have half the Valley field still here, still competing for championships. A couple of them going to take each other on, and we will be here to bring you all of it. So once again, thank you guys for support, and thanks you guys for watching us. Make sure you go to Valley Sports Telegram, where we'll be writing about all this action and everything that we're seeing around the Valley. Stay tuned. In the next couple of weeks, we'll have a volleyball wrap up. We have some champions that we got crowned, and we got some teams going strong in state. We'll have a pod where we'll talk about basketball is around the corner. Pay attention for a preview of the season, where we'll give you our biggest storylines that we're looking for headed into the winter season with all the winter sports. And make sure you follow us on all our social medias. We are constantly updating and telling you guys everything that you need to know and be in the know about in and around the Valley. And that's going to wrap up for this week. So thank you, everybody, for paying attention and listening. For Arshavir Sarian and your boy Kenny Hodges, make sure you hit those games this week. We'll talk to you next time. Peace.